This video is for people who stalk, for people who are being stalked, and also for people who, for example, work in law enforcement or who know somebody who is being stalked. Many stalking victims feel let down by law enforcement, and the recent paper that I've included in the description noted the huge discrepancy between people who report that they're being stalked, self-report that they're being stalked, and the incidents of stalking as recorded by the police in the same period. Over 1 million versus slightly over 10,000. The police forces in England and Wales have admitted that they fail stalking victims as a rule, and several organisations have just brought legal proceedings against the police forces in England and Wales. By the way, that paper that I just mentioned is by Jareth, Thompson and Ballure, and it's excellent. I recommend it. Read it. Stalking is very challenging to deal with for law enforcement. There are various reasons for that. First of all, it's very time-consuming to investigate it. It requires special expertise and that makes it expensive. It's very hard to prosecute stalking, it's rarely successful, and if you put someone in jail or you punish someone, it doesn't stop the stalking, it can actually aggravate the situation. Stalking clinics, which a few police forces in England and Wales are experimenting with, are only a small drop in the ocean, but they do provide useful information. They offer treatment to a selection of stalkers who have been convicted, so this concerns only a very small proportion of the stalking cases. Stalking victims are often ridiculed and otherized. People may smirk and say that they hope that the victim's anxiety problem will soon be a lot better. Friends and family often abandon stalking victims. And police officers too often do not understand the huge impact that stalking usually has on the victims. I don't like the word victim, I don't like the word target either, so I've recently started using the word Tamagotchi. How can we improve the situation? Through education. Because neuroscience tells us that it's harder to feel empathy for people that you're not familiar with, who are going through things that you're not familiar with. And although stalking happens to many of us, it still only happens to a relative minority. Most people are still not being stalked. Oh, and by the way, most stalking is being done by men to women, so that's how I tend to talk about it, but men also get stalked and some women also engage in stalking. But it's just more convenient for me to talk about men stalking women. Education has to be part of the solution. The more familiar we become with the impact that stalking has on victims and also on perpetrators, the more empathy we can feel for the victims, but also for the perpetrators, for some of the perpetrators. I'll come back to that. They too are very badly otherized, and extensive prolonged otherization can be what caused the stalking. Why is stalking so devastating? Because victims don't know what's going through the mind of a stalker. When we see a bird visit us every day, or a neighborhood cat, or a fox, we think it's cute. But when another adult human being targets us, stalks us, we become acutely aware of the fact that we're prey animals on a visceral level. We become scared. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's on the mind of the person. This is something that stalkers often simply do not get. They don't get it. They have no idea of the effect. Some do, often they do, but very often they don't. So if you are a stalker, put yourself in the shoes of the person that you're stalking. Imagine that you're sitting in your garden and a big, dangerous lion shows up. How would you feel? And how would you feel if that lion shows up the next day, again, when you're sitting there reading a book? And how would you start to feel if that lion shows up every day from then on? You can't sit in your garden anymore to read a book because that lion, you have no idea what's on his mind, do you? So if you're a stalker, that's more or less what you're doing to the people that you're so fascinated with. The people you're fascinated with, the woman you're fascinated with, she has no idea what you want from her. And she feels threatened, she feels afraid, she feels confused, and she feels like you're taking over her entire life. What I hadn't realized is that the situation for law enforcement is actually much more complicated than this. It's already complex enough. We think of stalking as loitering in somebody's vicinity. Physical loitering at somebody's place at work, at somebody's home, making repetitive calls, sending emails, all under that person's name, not trying to hide his identity. That's relatively easy to prove, but this kind of case is becoming rarer. Much more common is cyberstalking, stalking that begins online and that occurs under different names or completely anonymous. You have no idea who's picking your locks, for example. And here's the problem. Picking somebody's locks, that's not stalking. Emptying a bucket of water over someone, that's not stalking. Stealing somebody's postal mail, that's not stalking. Hacking in somebody's phone, hacking somebody's equipment, tampering with somebody's email, that's not stalking. Of course, stalking and harassment laws vary by country. But all of these things, going into somebody's home and destroying property, that's not stalking. And harassment in England and Wales is a lesser crime than stalking. But stalking and harassment, I've been arguing for a while, should not be a matter for the police. They should only become a matter for the police as a last resort, when prosecution is necessary, when real serious harm has been done. New organizations should be set up that have the specialized expertise that can triage all incoming reports of stalking and harassment and dedicate resources, look at IT aspects, and of course stalking probably has to be redefined within the law. But stalking is not necessarily a policing problem, it's a public health problem. It's also an economic problem because when you're being stalked, you can no longer earn a living in many cases. Many stalking victims lose their homes, lose their jobs, etc. It shouldn't be a matter for the police. The police do not have the expertise at hand and many mistakes are made. They are not mental health specialists, and in most stalking cases, mental health doesn't actually play a role. It's a difference in communication, a difference in understanding, a difference in cognitive abilities that often plays a role in stalking cases, and I'll come back to that. In the current situation, it means that if you're being stalked, it may be best not to go to the police, and that's pretty crazy because it leaves you stranded. But when you go to the police, chances are that the police won't do anything. You'll feel frustrated, you've wasted a lot of time and effort, and you do likely not want to talk about being stalked. Aside from the fact that we have a lot of problems at the Met, the London Metropolitan Police, and several other police forces as well, because every second you have to talk about it is a second stolen from your life. You want your life back. You don't want to spend your entire day talking about what's being done to you. And if you go to the police and the police do nothing and basically maybe ridicule you, you feel pretty bad. Your stalker is very likely to find out that you've gone to the police. Maybe not. He's going to be angry, but he's also going to feel encouraged and receives a boost from the fact that the police won't do anything. So here we have 3 reasons why it's not so good to go to the police these days if you're a stalking victim. And here you have perhaps the explanation for the big discrepancy between over 1 million self-reported stalking cases and just over 10,000 being reported in the same period to the police in England and Wales. I'm now going to read you a few passages from 2 papers, and after that I will discuss 2 stalking cases, show you what the problem was and also what was different about these 2 cases. Stalking clinics, that's what this paper is about. In this study, 6 cases of stalkers who received treatment in a stalking clinic were looked at. This is an excellent paper. Read it. Key areas yet to be fully explored in the literature are how stalking offenders understand their own behaviors, ways in which their lives are affected by the stalking. Stalking is devastating for the offenders too. Nobody chooses to stalk because it can have usually has devastating consequences for their own lives. That points towards the problem. There are many people who do not get treatment at a young age. They don't know how to communicate. I'll come back to that. Key areas yet to be fully explored in literature are how stalking offenders understand their own behavior, ways in which their lives are affected by stalking, and how their fixation and associated behaviors can be addressed through psychological interventions. Like I just said, sanctions sometimes exacerbate the problem. Police officers have no way of knowing this. They are not stalking experts. Another complication with stalking here in England and Wales is that stalkers have to be aware that what they're doing is impacting their victims. If they don't realize that they're impacting their victims, then it's not stalking. Although stalking is also to a large degree defined by how the victim experiences it. And here again, there is a distinct lack of understanding on the part of officers around the severity and gravity of harms to victims posed by stalking. Because stalking is mainly done by men to women, and because women are still not taken seriously around the world, 9 out of 10 people still discriminate against women, basically see women as flawed human beings. The stalking is ascribed to them, that they're women, that they experience anxiety. If they weren't experiencing anxiety, they wouldn't have reported the stalking. That's of course crazy. But the same problem happens with burglary. The police don't do anything about burglary anymore. And burglary is not your fault. Same with stalking. You may have past someone on the sidewalk, on the pavement, and reminded the person of his mother. Or you've spoken with someone in a shop, or while you're traveling to the same destination on a train. That can trigger someone. Someone may have seen your photo online or on one of your social media accounts and thought, oh, she looks lovely. Or she reminds me of my first girlfriend. These little things can trigger someone into becoming fascinated by you. If stalkers have offended, they usually tend to offend again. There needs to be a lot more research into this. Psychological assessment and treatment, says this paper, and that's absolutely true. There need to be assessments at earlier ages. I'll come back to that. But how do you determine who needs treatment when people are still very young, when treatment is still most effective? And again, research on psychological treatments for stalking offenders is scarce. Yeah, the 6 stalkers in this study were between the ages of 24 and 55, and they all described themselves as white British. I'm going to quote to you now a few things that they said. I was hoping that we could work it out. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be cared for. I wanted to be needed. That was the overall thing, just to be back together and know that it would be the right thing to do. Another one says, I wanted more and I believed she wanted more. That's not something that she has said to you, has she? Stop telling yourself that she wants the same thing that you want. I thought I loved her. You thought you loved her. Because I thought we were meant to be together. And all that fairy tale stuff. It was just me buying stuff and buying her love. Another one said, I struggled to communicate and socialize. I was socially awkward, so there was a bit of a barrier there. I wanted something more out of it in my mind, and I thought the only way I'm going to get it was to sort of make it happen. And then between brackets, by repeatedly contacting and following her. But this can also be done in different ways, I've noticed. If you, for example, are a hacker, you can force someone to be in your life by hacking into the person's equipment, by listening to her and helping her, but effectively often thwarting her because you have no idea what she needs. What you think she needs and wants is what basically you would want if you were her, but you're not her. That is something that you need to realize. If somebody hasn't said to you specifically, I want this or that, don't go around assuming that this is what the person wants. And on the other hand, sometimes people say things specifically that you shouldn't be taking too literally. And two of these offenders displayed the typical behavior that we consider stalking, and that is very often no longer the case. Two offenders displayed drunk and disorderly conduct on a regular basis outside their victim's house. The other four were physically watching, loitering, and attempting entry to their victim's home, as well as showing physical displays of affection through notes and gifts. This is classical stalking. This is what we consider stalking, and that is very often no longer the case. The problem for victims is that when they call a stalker, these stalkers can get very angry. That can be dangerous. But until you call them a stalker, they often don't realize that what they're doing is stalking. Here's one guy who says, when you get classed as a stalker is the main word. People know what you say when I was harassing her. But when you get classed as a stalker, that's why I wanted the therapist to help, because I don't want it to happen again. The problem with stalking is that you don't know what to do. Sometimes engaging with a stalker can help, but it can also encourage. Rejecting a stalker or going absolutely no contact, completely ignoring the person, can be effective, but it can also encourage the person. And there is no way of knowing as a victim what you should do. There's no way of knowing for the people who are around the victim either what they should do. They can attempt to protect her. They can be warned, for example, if somebody calls and says that he is a friend of mine or she, don't tell them that I'm going to be at that restaurant at 7 this evening. Don't tell them who my sister is. Don't tell them that I play football. Don't give out details. Don't give out details over the phone, not to a police officer, anyone pretending to be a police officer, not to anyone pretending to be a social worker. That's what victims can do, tell people around them what's going on and warn them not to give out any information at all. Just take down the person's name and phone number or whatever it is and hand it to you as a victim so that you know whether you're dealing with someone you know or not. That it's so very easy through people engineering for people around the victim to fall for this. And these days, with software that can mimic anyone's voice, even the victim's voice, it becomes sheer impossible. So make it a rule never to give out any information over the phone. Only hand out information, only give out information when you're talking to a person face to face. Live video can be faked as well. You can check that by asking the person to turn around. If they can't do it quickly enough or they can't do it, then there's a chance that the video is faked. But it's still much harder to fake live video than it is to fake email or to fake voicemail or... What I want you to be aware of is that what we consider logic isn't actually always that logical. It often depends on knowledge that we already have. Let me give you an example. If, say, you're an animal and you're afraid of apples, you've never seen apples, apples are big, you're a small animal, apples are dangerous, but you've eaten little pieces of apple and you liked those. Is it more logical to conclude that because you've eaten little pieces, that the big apple is not dangerous, or that the big apple, that is much bigger, means that the small pieces are dangerous too? I'll give you another example. Receiving flowers is nice. Giving someone flowers is nice. Buying someone a sandwich, that's nice. So why is it not nice to do this every day? For many people, this may seem logical, but it isn't necessarily logical to everyone. And this is where I feel that a lot of stalking cases actually represent a failure on the part of society to provide support to people who are not mainstream. If they had been in the majority and we neurotypicals were in a minority, the situation would have been the reverse. We would have been the ones that were seen as causing problems. We need to provide support to people at a much younger age before certain misunderstandings can escalate and a lot of resentment builds up. How do you do that? How do you identify these people? I think it will have to come from the community and from friends and family of people who are being identified as perhaps having a problem with logic. There needs to be a lot more education about this. I didn't know that. I didn't know anything about autism, I thought. But it turned out that I've had a friend who is slightly autistic for decades. And she, a few times, exhibited a logic that exasperated me, that made me angry. But now that I know that she's autistic, which she has confirmed, I have a much better understanding of where she was coming from. Now I get it. And once you get it, you can also try to build bridges. As long as you don't get it, as long as both sides of this communication mismatch don't get it, you end up with conflicts, and a lot of resentment can build up over a lifetime. That can make people very determined to get back at us neurotypicals. I can actually understand that. How come I understand that? After I moved from Amsterdam to England, I became very badly otherized, and particularly here in the town where I am based, people started saying that I was learning disabled and this and that, and this was often tested, and all sorts of basically bullying activities were carried out, community harassment. That made me realize where a lot of the stalking comes from, why some people are so very angry at women that they just want to be friends with, who experience a huge communication mismatch that has built up a lot of resentment over the years. We need to start providing better support at a much younger age, and that's a failure on the part of society. That's not a failure on their part. They just think differently. Their logic may be different. That doesn't mean that it's wrong. So what we need to learn to do is build bridges. We need to learn to build bridges between all sorts of groups in society. And we've failed to do that so far. The first case that I'm going to talk about took place in St. Petersburg, Florida, just a few years before I moved there. Probably partly coinciding, not sure. I wasn't aware of it at the time. In this case, we see a 24 young male who becomes obsessed with a 14-year-old girl because she is the only one who doesn't ridicule him. Everybody else has made fun of him for as long as he remembers. That's profound authorization. He was 24. His stalking case got a lot of attention. A film was made about it, and the parents of the girl in question said that this film portrays their experiences really well. I've taken a few clips from this film, and I want you to think about what exactly it is that you see there. When a situation like this, a miscommunication between neurodivergent people, that is, neurotypicals and neurodivergent people, is allowed to continue without any support, it can get out of hand. This guy was 24 years old, and he seems to be still living in the same town and making a pretty good living, probably a much better living than I do. I think that guys like this person who was called Kurt in the film simply need more support, and I feel that it's a failure on the part of society that we do not provide that support, but that we authorize people. We authorize people enormously, and it's getting worse. The second case took place at around the same time, I think just a few years later, and it, stupidly enough, started here where I'm living now, Gosport and Fareham. This woman was also pursued for years. She lost her job, she lost her marriage, and her stalker then followed her to the county in which her parents were living because she moved in with her parents. She had to, she had no choice. There is no support for stalking victims at all. None. Zero. Absolutely none. There are organizations who make a lot of noise. They educate. They try to educate. Education is needed, but they do not provide support. They're usually way behind on what's going on in the world. It goes for police too. And in this case, we see someone who, unlike Kurt in the other case, never received any support and got angrier and angrier and angrier and angrier and carried a lot of resentment. He got sentenced several times. It had no effect. He changed his name, which is very easy to do here in England, and he then befriended another woman. When this woman found out who he was in real life, he completely panicked and yelled something like, "Tell her the game is over." He then tried to kill her, and his intention had been to kill himself too. He's now in prison for life. I think that what we had in both cases was a cognitive difference. I used to say cognitive deficit, but that's actually not correct. It just means that people are in a minority. If they had been in a majority and neurotypicals had been in a minority, then it would not have been called a deficit, but a difference. These are people who see life differently, who think differently, who reason differently. And they get otherized by neurotypicals because they are the ones in a majority. And they can build up a lot of resentment over the years, and they can become very determined to get back at those neurotypicals. I can understand that. I can actually understand that. And they can become very, very skilled at circumventing law enforcement, at making it look like their target is crazy. They do not want to go to jail. They are not stupid. Many of them are not stupid at all. And again, I feel that it's a failure on the part of society that it does not provide these individuals with support at a much younger age before these situations can escalate.
It was through junior softball that we first met Kurt Harper. Kurt was a volunteer umpire for girls softball. He was kind of a quiet, anonymous guy ordinarily, but something happened to him when he put on that umpire's uniform.
See your future son-in-law is umpiring today, Linda.
Right, Rick. Real amusing.
Play ball!
Hey, Kurt. Packed your bag 15 times already.
Oh, that's just he's afraid he left something
Forget something, Kurt? Shirt, shoes, brains.
Hey, real nice game today, Larissa. Nice out in the fourth inning.
Thanks.
real nice boyfriend, Larissa.
We'll see you guys.
See you at the Tigers game, Larissa.
Larissa! Larissa, honey!
Yeah,
Look what just came for you.
for me?
Uh-huh.
You're kidding.
Read the card.
Your secret admirer. Mom, did you and Dad send these?
No.
Weird.
Here comes your favorite person, Larissa. You won't believe what he's wearing.
Hi, Larissa.
Hi, Kurt.
I'm not umpiring the game tomorrow.
Real nice outfit, Kurt. Isn't it, Larissa?
Volunteer fireman. I signed up.
Ooh, pretty impressive. Isn't it, Larissa?
Katie, just throw the ball, okay? Kurt, come on. I've got to warm up, okay? Kurt.
First, you gotta answer just one little question, though. How'd you like the flowers?
What?
You know how much they cost? $45 plus delivery. That's a lot of money just for flowers. And even though we're in a recession, I don't mind spending it because you're a special young lady.
Oh.
What about thank you for the...
Flowers. Flowers. Thank you for the flowers, Kurt.
One more thing. How are you gonna pitch to Brooke Palmer today?
I don't know. She's the best hitter, right?
Low and inside. But don't tell anyone I told you that, okay? It's our secret.
Just please don't say anything about this to the other mothers, okay? Especially Katie's. I get teased enough about him already.
All right. Would you like me to say something to Kurt?
Mom, please don't. Let's just forget it. Forget I ever said anything, okay?
Honey, I don't think it's appropriate for an adult man to be sending flowers to a child.
Mom, I'm not a child.
Larissa, most 24-year-old men would not be drawn to a 14-year-old girl.
Life is umpiring junior softball. It's kind of sad. I don't want to make him feel more rejected, and he's only trying to be nice. That's all.
You are a good person, you know that? Every week for the past 5 weeks. And the love notes he puts in with these flowers to a 14-year-old.
Playing ball. She was always nice to him, too. I mean, she didn't tease him the way the other girls did.
Yeah. All I said was, Kurt can't help it if he's a little different, so let's just treat him like anyone else.
He's harmless, Linda. He's got the IQ of sea kelp. I'd say that's different. He's got to be harmless, don't you think?
Yeah, I guess. And I don't want to be one of those hysterical, overprotective mothers.
Speaking of which...
Hi, Mom.
Hi.
What's all this? It came in the mail for Larissa. It must be a birthday present.
Funny. Birthday's not till the end of the month.
This was in it, Mom.
What is it? It's a money order. All right. Let's put this stuff back in the box. I'm gonna send it all back, return to sender.
I can't get on him just for sending her a birthday present, Linda.
But just talk to him, that's all. You can be nice, but make him understand that has to stop.
In a couple of weeks, she'll turn 15. She'll have to leave junior softball anyway. He'll quit all this.
Honey, being easygoing and letting things pass doesn't work with everybody, you know?
Yeah.
Kurt, I want to talk to you. Hey, let's stop all this stuff, okay? You know what I mean, the gifts, the notes and all. It's upsetting to Linda. And I don't really like it either.
What's Larissa say?
Look, I'm asking you as Larissa's father to knock it off. Now, no more, you hear?
You see that big fire over on South 10th last night? Big bowling alley? Could have been arson, maybe. Teenagers. Some of these teenage boys are real bad kids, you know, Nelson? Real bad kids.
Are you making some kind of threat here, Kurt? Is that the idea?
No way. No way, Nelson. I helped put out the fire. I'm a volunteer fireman, you know. You see my uniform? New red one? It's cool. Larissa saw it. I went into the building, and it was still burning. The other guys, they say I was crazy. They call me hard-ass Harper. They do. But I figure it's my job, you know, protecting private property. And it's important, because we're in a recession now. You know, Nelson? Real bad.
Well, the recession's going to work itself out eventually. So there's no point in worrying about that now, is there, okay?
Hello? 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 Who's there? Hello?
Avenue, your cross streets are 2nd and 3rd, map page 21D.
And now, we've been hit with almost $1,000 worth of bills for stuff that my daughter did not order. He writes her all these notes and cards, all very amorous. He hangs around her school, he calls up. We haven't had a good night's sleep in weeks.
Larissa, are you okay?
Yeah. I get tense sometimes.
How did he know you were going to be at this game? It's like he's either got your phone tapped or he's got some sort of mental telepathy with you or something.
Please don't say stuff like that.
I'm kidding. Just kidding around.
Please don't say anything about him to Derek, okay?
Well, I won't, but Kevin might have said something to him already.
Kevin knows. How does Kevin know?
Larissa, I'm sorry.
Check and see if he's out there. Mom, this time it's really him.
Okay, just stay aside. It's okay. It's okay.
Oh, hi, Linda. I was just checking on you because I know that Nelson went on a fishing trip.
I'm sure you do. Kurt, what is your absolutely most unfavorite color?
Unfavorite would be orange, I guess. Purple.
Okay. Well, then the first thing I'm going to do is drive to Save Mart and buy a great big can of orange spray paint, the Dayglow kind, and a great big can of purple. And the next time you show up here like this, I'm going to spray paint your nice gray car all orange and purple from bumper to bumper. Now, what do you think of that?
You can't do that, Linda. That's against the law. This car is private property. You can't
Well,
hurt
this
private
yard is private property, and so's that house, and so's my daughter. Do you hear me?
I hear! I hear! You can't do that, Linda. That's against the law. This car is private property. You can't
Well,
hurt
this
private
yard is
property.
private property, and so's that house, and so's my daughter. Do you hear me?
I hear! I hear!
You've all agreed to the following. Curtis Harper agrees to have no contact whatsoever with any member of the Anello family, either in person, by mail, or by phone. Should any such contact take place, the Anello family reserves the right to pursue legal action. If we're all agreed then, we just need your signatures at the bottom left, Mr. and Mrs. Anello. And Mr. Harper, bottom right.
You and Linda want me to sign this, Nelson?
We want you to understand it and sign it, Kurt.
Okay. Hey! Hey! It was real nice seeing you both again. I miss seeing you at junior softball. I can still umpire, you know, just not at Northfield.
Did you read that piece of paper you just signed, Kurt?
Nelson, is Linda upset with me or something?
Kurt, we just both think it's time you've got some new interests. You understand that?
Yeah. I'm thinking of signing up at the fire academy. Be a career firefighter. You know, it's a good, steady job. $21,700 a year just to start. You know, that's good money in this recession. There's a lot of layoffs all over. Sears and GM. You know that big tire store over on Playa Boulevard?
I wish you wouldn't talk to him. You just encourage him.
Just don't see any point in making the guy mad, that's all. Just makes the situation worse, Linda.
Stalking should no longer be dealt with by the police, but be seen as a public health problem that requires a separate organization, a specialized organization with IT specialists who know about stalking techniques, forensic psychologists, but not just forensic psychologists who condemn stalkers, but who are able to support them. Because condemning people is easy. It's very, very easy. Otherizing others is much easier than feeling empathy for them. It's more costly for the brain to feel empathy for people you feel no connection with. Neuroscience. I'm not a psychologist, I don't work in law enforcement, I have an earth and life science background.